Under the blinding lights of the Los Angeles Superior Court, the air was thick with tension. Cameras clicked from every corner, reporters whispered into microphones, and in the center of it all stood a man in a faded suit, a single dad, a war hero, and the accused, Ethan Cole. He wasn't supposed to be there. Once a Delta Force commander, Ethan had spent 15 years serving his country in silence, completing missions no one would ever know about, burying memories no one would ever understand. When he came home, he wanted nothing more than peace, a quiet life with his 8-year-old daughter, Lila, in their small house on the outskirts of Pasadena. But peace never came, because 6 months ago, billionaire Marcus Vail, a man whose name was synonymous with power, accused Ethan of industrial espionage, claiming he'd stolen classified defense tech from Vail Industries, a deal worth billions with the Pentagon. The media devoured it. From soldier to spy, one headline had read, Ethan's face was everywhere. His military career, once a symbol of honor, became ammunition against him. The single dad who had once saved lives overseas was now painted as a national traitor. But what the world didn't know was this: Ethan was framed. It all began with a phone call. Ethan had been working as a private security consultant, taking small contracts to keep food on the table. His daughter's medical bills were stacking up. She'd been born with a rare spinal condition, and the surgeries were draining him dry. So when Marcus Vail himself reached out offering a lucrative short-term job, a 3-week private protection detail for a corporate retreat in Nevada, Ethan didn't hesitate. The pay was life-changing. Enough to cover Lila's next surgery. Enough to finally breathe. For the first few days, everything was routine. Vail was a charming man, with slick smiles and an aura of control that made even the most confident men uneasy. He liked to brag about his wealth, his connections, his ownership of half the politicians in Washington. Then came the night Ethan found something he shouldn't have. He'd been assigned to check the security feeds in Vail's private suite when he stumbled upon a hidden folder on the system. Inside were encrypted files, blueprints for advanced military drones, tagged as Pentagon restricted. Ethan immediately recognized the signatures. They were the same classified designs he'd seen years ago during an off-the-books Delta Force mission. That technology was supposed to be locked deep within the Department of Defense. And now, it was sitting on Marcus Vail's private network. Ethan confronted him the next morning, off the record. He didn't go in as a threat, just a man warning another that he was walking into dangerous territory. But Vail's response chilled him. "You've seen too much," Vail said, sipping his coffee with a smirk. "That's unfortunate, Commander Cole." By nightfall, Ethan's life imploded. Federal agents stormed his home. His laptop, his phone, seized. The evidence, all pointing to him. Vail Industries files had been hacked from Ethan's IP address, his fingerprints all over the stolen documents. It was perfect. A clean frame-up. And Vail made sure the press ran with it. Now, standing in court, Ethan could barely keep his composure as Vail's legal team tore into his reputation. "Mr. Cole," the prosecutor sneered, pacing before the jury, "isn't it true you've been struggling financially since leaving the military? That you were desperate for money?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "I was struggling, yes. My daughter has." "Answer the question, Mr. Cole." "Yes," he said quietly. The prosecutor smiled, sensing blood. "And when you realized Vail Industries was developing proprietary military technology, you saw an opportunity. You had the skills, the access, the motive. That's not what happened." "Of course it isn't." Vail sat in the front row, expressionless, like a man watching a show he'd already paid to win. But the real show was yet to begin. Because Ethan had something Vail didn't know, a backup plan. 3 weeks before the trial, while under house arrest, Ethan received a letter from an old contact, Maya Torres, a cyber intelligence officer he'd once saved in Kabul. She'd been following his case quietly, convinced that the digital trail didn't add up. "You were set up, Ethan," she'd said over an encrypted call. "Whoever planted those files knew your system inside out, your exact login habits, your encryption pattern. That's not random. That's personal." Maya went underground, digging into Vail's servers through dark channels. What she found was explosive. Hidden deep inside Vail's offshore cloud storage were time-stamped access logs from the night of the supposed hack. Logs that showed the intrusion came not from Ethan's home network, but from inside Vail Industries itself. Even worse, there were emails, communications between Vale and a Pentagon official named Senator Whitlock, discussing the sale of classified weapons tech through private defense contracts. Ethan was nothing more than a scapegoat to cover up their deal. But Maya knew that dropping this evidence without proof of chain custody would get it dismissed in court. So she did the unthinkable. She infiltrated Vale's system live, during the trial. The final day of testimony began like any other. Vale's lawyers were ready to crush Ethan's last defense witness. The courtroom buzzed as the judge called order. Then, suddenly, the giant screen meant for exhibits flickered. The court clerk frowned. Lines of code appeared. Then a folder opened, automatically. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Judge," Vale's attorney barked, "we have an unauthorized." "Let it play," said the judge, narrowing her eyes. The screen filled with a series of video logs, encrypted data recordings, each stamped with Vale's personal access key. The room fell silent as the first file played. Marcus Vale's voice echoed through the speakers. "Once Cole finds the files, we'll trigger the IP reroute. His system's already